They treated me like a burden until I became the solution for most of my life. I learned how to be quiet without being asked, and not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that comes from knowing your presence makes people uncomfortable. Kind where you feel like you have to apologize just for existing. I didn't always have words for it back then. I just knew that whenever I walked into a room, conversations shifted, voices lowered, eyes avoided mine. And sometimes, if I stayed too long, someone would sigh like my presence was a weight they had to carry. At home, they never said it directly. They didn't need to. I was the burden, not the loud troublemaker, not the rebel, not the disappointment you could point to and blame for everything. I was something quieter, more exhausting to them. The one who needed more time, more patience, more understanding, the one who didn't fit into the neat plan they had imagined for their family. I grew up hearing phrases that sounded harmless on the surface. He's just going through a phase. He'll figure it out eventually. Don't worry, we'll handle him, handle me. As if I were a problem to manage, not a person to understand. At family gatherings, I became invisible. People talked over me. Decisions were made without asking what I thought. If something went wrong, eyes instinctively drifted toward me, even when I had nothing to do with it. And the worst part was that after a while, I started believing them. I started believing that maybe I really was too much, too slow, too sensitive, too complicated. So I tried to make myself smaller. I stopped asking for help, stopped sharing ideas, stopped talking about what I wanted out of life. I learned how to disappear in plain sight. But disappearing doesn't make the weight go away, that just presses it inward. By the time I reached adulthood, the label was already attached to me. It followed me everywhere. At home, I was the one who still hasn't figured things out. At work, I was reliable, but not leadership material. In relationships, I was kind, but not enough. No one said it directly, but everyone treated me the same way, like I was something they had to carry, and I carried that shame with me quietly. For years, I remember one moment in particular that still plays in my mind, like a loop I can't turn off. We were sitting at the dinner table, nothing dramatic, just a normal evening. My family was discussing a problem they were dealing with, bills, stress, a situation that felt too big for them. I listened carefully. I had thoughts, real ideas, solutions that actually made sense. I waited for a pause to speak. It never came. They talked around me, over me, about me. At one point I tried to jump in, just one sentence. My father didn't even look at me. "We don't need to stress him out with this," he said. If I wasn't sitting right there, stress me out. As if I were fragile. As if I couldn't handle reality. As if my mind wasn't capable of carrying weight. That was the moment. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was quieter than that. It was the moment. I realized they would never see me differently if I stayed where I was, because when people decide you are a burden, they stop expecting anything from you. And when expectations disappear, so does opportunity. That night I went to my room and stared at the ceiling for hours. I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. I was empty. And in that emptiness, a dangerous thought formed. What if they're right? What if I really don't have anything valuable to offer? That thought haunted me for months. It shaped the way I walked into rooms, the way I spoke, the way I hesitated before making decisions. I began avoiding responsibility, not because I couldn't handle it, but because I had been trained to believe I shouldn't if something failed. It would just confirm what they already believed about me, so I stayed in the background until life made the decision for me. The turning point didn't come as a grand opportunity or a moment of inspiration. It came as a collapse. One by one, things in my life started falling apart. The job I had settled for, not the one I wanted, but the one that felt safe, let me go without warning. Budget cuts, they said. Nothing personal. It felt personal. The friends I thought I could rely on slowly drifted away when I didn't have anything exciting to offer anymore. No success stories, no momentum. Just uncertainty. At home, the disappointment was quiet but heavy. I could feel it in the way conversations stopped when I entered the room. In the way advice turned into lectures. In the way concern slowly turned into frustration. I was no longer just a burden. I was becoming proof that their low expectations had been justified. And that's when something unexpected happened. They needed help, not emotional support, not encouragement, real help. A serious problem surfaced, one that couldn't be ignored, one that demanded solutions, not excuses. A situation involving finances, logistics, and decisions that no one wanted to make. Suddenly, the same people who had spent years protecting me from responsibility were overwhelmed by it. I watched them struggle, panic, argue. And for the first time, I realized something that shook me to my core. They weren't stronger than me. They were just louder. They were just more confident in spaces that had always made me feel small. But when it came to actually solving the problem, they were lost. I saw gaps they didn't see, patterns they missed, solutions they dismissed because they didn't fit the way things had always been done. For days, I said nothing. Old habits die hard. But the pressure kept growing. The problem didn't go away. And eventually, they reached a point where silence was more dangerous than letting me speak. One evening, my mother turned to me. "What do you think we should do?" It was a simple question, but it felt like an earthquake. No one had asked me that in years. My heart started racing. My mind screamed at me to stay quiet, to not risk embarrassment, to not step out of the role I had been assigned. But something inside me refused to shrink again. I took a breath and I spoke, not timidly, not apologetically, clearly, logically. I laid out everything I had been thinking for weeks, step by step, calmly, without trying to prove myself. The room went silent, not the uncomfortable kind this time, the listening kind. They didn't interrupt, they didn't dismiss it, they didn't correct me, they just listened. And when I finished, no one spoke for a moment. Then my father said something I will never forget. I hadn't thought of it that way. That sentence changed everything, not because it was praise, but because it was recognition. For the first time, I wasn't a burden in that room. I was a resource. And that scared me more than being invisible ever had, because once people see you as capable, there's no hiding anymore. And deep down, I knew this moment wasn't just about helping them, it was about deciding who I was going to be from now on. They treated me like a burden until I became the solution. After that night, nothing changed, and at the same time, everything did. The house looked the same. The furniture hadn't moved. The routines continued, but the way they looked at me, that was different. It wasn't admiration. Not yet. It wasn't trust either. It was uncertainty. They didn't know what to do with the version of me that had just spoken up for years. I had been predictable to them, quiet, passive, easy to overlook, and suddenly, I wasn't. The next morning I woke up expecting regret. That familiar voice in my head telling me I had said too much, stepped out of line, they embarrassed myself. But the regret never came. Instead, there was something else. Clarity. For the first time in my life, I realized I hadn't been silent because I lacked ideas. I had been silent because I had been conditioned to believe my ideas didn't matter. That realization hurt more than any insult ever had, because it meant the burden label wasn't something I was born with, it was something I had accepted. Over the next few days, the problem they were facing didn't magically disappear, but something changed in how it was handled. They started asking me questions, small ones at first. What do you think about this? Does this make sense to you? Can you look at these numbers? Each question felt strange, almost uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit yet. I answered carefully, not because I doubted myself, but because I knew how fragile this shift was. One mistake could send me right back to the background. But as I spoke, something unexpected happened. They started listening again, not out of pity, out of necessity, because my ideas worked, not perfectly, not magically, but practically as a way of earning respect when emotions fail slowly. My role in the family shifted, not officially. No one sat me down and said, "We were wrong about you." That would have required accountability. Instead, the change was subtle. They included me in conversations, they waited for my input, they stopped speaking for me, and yet, the emotional distance remained. Because while they were learning to see my value, I was still wrestling with something much heavier. Resentment. I didn't want to admit it at first. It didn't fit the image of the calm, helpful person I had become, but it was there. Every time they asked for my help, a part of me wanted to say no, not because I couldn't help, but because of how, as long they had refused to see me, that I remembered every dismissed idea. Every joke at my expense, every time my struggles were minimized, and now, suddenly, I was useful. That contradiction created a quiet storm inside me. I wanted to help, but I didn't want to be used. The line between the two felt dangerously thin. One afternoon, my mother came into my room. She stood there for a moment, unsure, like someone entering unfamiliar territory. "We couldn't have figured this out without you," she said. It was meant to be kind, but it landed heavier than she realized. I looked at her and asked a question that surprised both of us. "Why didn't you trust me before?" The silence that followed was thick. She opened her mouth and closed it. "Tried again. We just didn't want to put pressure on you." That old excuse. The one that sounds like care but feels like exclusion. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I knew pushing further would lead nowhere. They didn't see their behavior as cruelty. They saw it as protection. And that made everything more complicated. Because how do you confront someone who believes they were doing the right thing? As the weeks went on, my involvement deepened. I wasn't just giving advice anymore. I was taking responsibility. I handled phone calls they avoided. I organized plans they couldn't agree on. I made decisions when emotions made them freeze. And the more I did, the more they leaned on me. But with reliance came expectation. If I solved one problem, they assumed I could solve the next. If I stayed calm once, they expected calm every time. The burden had changed shape. Before, I was a burden because I was seen as incapable. Now, I was becoming a burden because I was carrying everything that no one asked if I was okay with that. One night, exhausted, I sat alone and realized something unsettling. I had gone from being invisible to being indispensable, and neither felt healthy. I started noticing how easily they slipped back into old patterns when stress hit. If something went wrong, frustration surfaced quickly. "Why didn't you catch this? I thought you were handling that." You said this would work. The praise disappeared as quickly as it had arrived, and that scared me, because it showed me how conditional their respect was. It wasn't based on who I was, it was based on what I provided. That realization, it forced me to confront a question I had avoided my entire life. Who am I when I stopped being useful? I had spent so long trying to prove I wasn't a burden that I risked becoming something just as damaging, a solution with no boundaries. The tension came to a head during a family meeting that started calm and ended raw. Voices rose. Old frustrations surfaced. Blame crept back into the room like it had never left. At one point, my father slammed his hand on the table. "This is falling apart again," he said. "We need you to fix this." That sentence did something to me. It didn't empower me, it angered me, because once again, the responsibility was being placed on me without any acknowledgement of what it cost. I stood up. Not dramatically, not aggressively, but deliberately. "I can help," I said, "but I can't carry this alone." They looked at me like I had spoken a foreign language. "What do you mean?" my mother asked. I took a breath. My voice didn't shake, but my chest felt tight. "I mean, I'm not the backup plan anymore. I'm not the safety net you only notice when things fall apart." The room went quiet. "I spent years being treated like I couldn't handle anything," I continued. "And now you're treating me like I have to handle everything." I could see discomfort on their faces, confusion, maybe even guilt. "I'm willing to be part of this," I said, "but not at the cost of disappearing again, just in a different way." That was the first boundary I had ever set with my family, and it terrified me because boundaries threaten systems built on imbalance. For a moment, I thought they might push back, argue, dismiss me, but something unexpected happened. They listened, not perfectly, not immediately, but enough. That night marked another shift, a harder one. They didn't stop relying on me, but they started sharing responsibility. Slowly, awkwardly, and I started learning something just as important, that my value wasn't proven by solving everything, it was proven by choosing when to step in outside the family. Changes were happening too. The confidence I had found didn't stay confined to that house. I started applying it elsewhere at work. I spoke up more, took initiative, questioned assumptions, and guess what? People responded. Not with shock, with respect. I realized something most people never tell you. The world doesn't automatically assign you value. It reflects the value you're willing to claim. And for the first time, I was claiming mine, but growth isn't linear. Just when I started to feel balanced, life tested me again. A new crisis emerged, bigger than the first. More emotional, more personal. One that reopened old wounds and forced buried truths to surface. And this time, it wasn't just about solving a problem, it was about confronting the past, because buried beneath all the stress, expectations, and resentment was a truth no one had ever wanted to face. The reason I had been treated like a burden wasn't just about fear, it was about guilt, and the closer I got to the center of that truth, the more resistance I felt, because becoming the solution meant exposing what had been broken all along. And not everyone was ready for that. They treated me like a burden until I became the solution. The second crisis didn't announce itself. It didn't arrive with noise or urgency. It crept in quietly, the way unresolved things always do. At first it felt like tension, shorter conversations, avoided eye contact, long pauses where there used to be routine. Then came the phone calls. Behind closed doors, the whispers. The sudden changes in plans. I noticed it before anyone said anything, because I had always been good at noticing what others tried to hide. One evening, I overheard my parents arguing in the kitchen, not loudly, but with that sharp, restrained tone that carries more weight than shouting. "We can't let this come out." My father said. "It's already affecting everything," my mother replied. "And what about him? He doesn't need to know." That last sentence stopped me in my tracks. My name wasn't said, but I knew. That familiar feeling returned, the one I thought I had outgrown. Being discussed without being included that night. I barely slept. Not because I was afraid of what they were hiding, but because I was tired of being protected from the truth like a fragile object. The next morning, I decided I wouldn't wait. I asked directly, "What's going on?" They exchanged looks, the kind that says everything and nothing at the same time. "It's complicated," my mother said. That word again. Complicated, a convenient shield for avoidance. "I can handle complicated," I replied. "I've been handling it my whole life." Silence followed. And then, slowly, the truth began to surface. What I learned that day changed how I saw my family forever. Years ago, long before I was labeled the burden, a decision had been made, a choice that affected everyone, and when things went wrong, someone had to carry the weight of it. I had been the easiest option. Not because I caused the problem, but because I wouldn't fight back. They didn't say it that bluntly, but the meaning was clear. They had projected their guilt onto me. My struggles became proof that the decision had been justified. My silence became confirmation that they didn't need to revisit it. And without realizing it, they had built an entire narrative around me, the fragile one, the incapable one, the burden, because as long as that story existed, they didn't have to face their own mistakes. Hearing this didn't break me, it clarified me for the first time. I understood that the weight I had carried was never mine to begin with, and that realization was both freeing and devastating. Freeing, because I wasn't broken. Devastating, because I had been sacrificed emotionally to preserve peace. I looked at them, really looked at them, not as authority figures, not as people whose approval I needed, but as flawed humans who had chosen comfort over honesty. I wish you had told me, I said quietly. My mother started crying. My father looked away. We thought it was better this way, he said. Better for who? I didn't ask the question out loud. We all knew the answer. That conversation didn't fix anything instantly. It cracked something open, and once cracked, it couldn't be closed again. In the weeks that followed, old dynamics began to unravel. Not smoothly, not cleanly. There were arguments, defensiveness, denial. At times, I wondered if speaking up had been a mistake. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of one truth. Silence had never protected me. It had only protected everyone else. I stopped stepping in, automatically stopped absorbing emotional chaos, just to keep things calm. And that shift was uncomfortable for them. Without my constant mediation, conflicts surfaced more clearly. They had to face each other. They had to face themselves, and slowly, something changed. Not in how they treated me, but in how I treated myself. I no longer tried to prove I wasn't a burden. I knew it, and knowing it changed everything. I pursued things I had postponed for years, spoke up in rooms where I would have stayed quiet, set boundaries without apologizing, and the world responded differently, not because it had changed, but because I had. One evening, months later, my father approached me. He didn't start with advice or deflection. He started with something I never expected. I'm sorry, he said. Just 2 words. Not followed by excuses, not softened by explanations. Just honesty. It should have stood up for you, he continued. Instead, I let you carry something that wasn't yours. I nodded. Not because it erased the past, but because it acknowledged it. That apology didn't heal everything, but it closed a chapter. From that point on, the family dynamic shifted again. This time, more authentically. I wasn't the burden, I wasn't the solution either. I was just a person, and that was enough. Looking back now, I understand something deeply. Being treated like a burden shapes you. It teaches you to shrink. Doubt. Overcompensate, but it can also sharpen you. It can teach you empathy, awareness, resilience. The danger isn't being underestimated. The danger is believing the estimate for years. I did, until I stopped. And when I did, everything changed. Not because I became louder, but because I became grounded. I didn't need to prove my worth anymore. I lived it. If you're listening to this and you feel like the burden in your family, your job, your relationships, hear this. You are not the problem. You may be the mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable, especially when they reflect things no one wants to see. Your silence may have been convenient for others, but your voice will be inconvenient and necessary. Becoming the solution doesn't mean saving everyone. That means refusing to disappear to make others comfortable. It means choosing truth over harmony. And self-respect over approval. Didn't become the solution by fixing everything. I became it the moment I stopped carrying what was never mine, and that changed my life forever.